I've actually questioned for a while whether I wanted to make this video or not, because Cross Tag Battle is going to have so many DLC characters. They're going to have 20 DLC characters. Now, we have no idea how that's actually going to end up working. Is the main game going to cost $60? Are the DLC characters going to be able to be unlocked with an in-game currency? We don't know how any of that's going to work. But regardless, the sheer number of characters is quite daunting for a wish list or a prediction list. And in all honesty, because I'm such a big RWBY fan and I'm fairly new to the other franchises, it's hard for me to make a wish list or even a prediction list. So I had a friend of mine help me out with the prediction list part of this video. Before I get into the list, I want to say if you're new around here, subscribing is always appreciated. We're on our way to 15,000 subscribers. And if you're not new around here, leaving a like is always appreciated. All right, let's jump straight into the list. But if I'm being entirely honest, my wish list would end up looking something like this. Blake Yang, Jean, Nora, Pyrrha, Ren, Sun, Neptune, Coco, Velvet, Ozpin, Raven, Penny, Flint plus Neon as an assist, or the other way around, Mercury, Emerald, Neapolitan, Roman, Adam, and Amber. Now, sadly, unfortunately, this game is not a RWBY game, and we're not going to get that many new RWBY characters. In fact, I would probably guess that Blake and Yang are going to be the only remaining RWBY characters to be added to the game. Also, the amount of animation work and sprite work that would need to be done to have any more RWBY characters is obviously quite a lot. Now, personally, I have quite a bit of hope for the amount of RWBY characters in this game. I'm actually not necessarily expecting, but I'm hoping to see Team Juniper on top of the main RWBY team. Why do I expect / hope for that to happen? Well, I actually think this whole partnership with Rooster Teeth in order to make a RWBY game, essentially, I'm hoping that eventually it leads to a full-on, like, RWBY game. ArcSystemWorks develops a game called RWBY, and inside of the RWBY game is only RWBY characters. I'm expecting that to happen at some point. In order for that to happen, they're going to need sprites already made to be able to put into that game, because it's impossible with the release schedule that ArcSystemWorks has to be able to make enough sprites to be able to do that in one release. Now, it is possible, however, to do a game like BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle while you're waiting to do a full-on RWBY game. That way you can make the sprites required for BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, and then eventually when you go to do the RWBY game, you already have 4 of your sprites made, and possibly 8 of your sprites made if you decide to do Team Juniper as well. With all of that out of the way, and all of my RWBY love out of the way, it is time to move on to the more realistic part of this video where I talk about what the roster size is actually going to be. So for people who don't know the way the DLC is going to work in this game, as 2 of the characters are going to be sold separately. One of them is Blake, so the assumption is that the other one is going to be Yang, and all of the other 18 characters are going to be sold in packs of 3, broken up into 6 different packs. The assumption here is that there's going to be a combination of BlazBlue, Persona, and Undernight characters in there. I do not think any RWBY characters are going to be involved in those other packs, unless they do decide to do Team Juniper, in which case then they'll be thrown in randomly among those packs. Now, if they are thrown in randomly among those packs, that's an entirely different story that I would have to make another video for, but moving on with this assumption that it's only going to be BlazBlue and Persona characters in those 18 characters that we just talked about, I think the roster will have 10 BlazBlue characters, 4 Persona characters, and 4 Undernight characters. So with that in mind, let's jump into my prediction list. I actually did have to get a lot of help for this list from my friend who does play these games and is much more familiar with these games than I am, but I also added my own input as well. Starting off with the BlazBlue roster, and we're going to go ahead and get 9 in there. 9 is a pretty popular character. She's a very interesting character. She's fairly unique to the rest of the roster. For people who don't remember the Blake trailer at the end, they actually showed a bunch of silhouettes, and one of them actually does kind of look like 9, so my assumption is that that's going to be 9. Next up is Tsubaki. I actually don't know much about this character, so I don't really have much input, but according to my friend, she seems like a surefire pick to be showing up on the DLC roster. Next up is Hakumen. I'm actually pretty surprised Hakumen hasn't been revealed yet, because Hakumen's a pretty popular character among BlazBlue. He's also very important to the story from what I can tell. He's also got a lot of really interesting moves as well that I think just translate very well into Cross Tag Battle, so I'm like almost 100% on this pick. I think Hakumen's going to show up. Next up is Coco Noe. I don't actually know much about this character, and she's a different archetype of character for this game that we don't really have so far. Not necessarily as far as gameplay is concerned, as far as artistic design goes and her character in general. Speaking of a unique character, Platinum is up next. She's just so unique, and it's a BlazBlue character like no other. I just think it's pretty likely she'll show up on the DLC roster. Also, one of the silhouettes seems to slightly match her, so that's the one I'm going to go with. Next up is Naruto. I know that kind of sounds weird coming from an Australian because of the way that I have to pronounce it, because we pronounce our A's quite strangely. The character's got his own special look, and I'm sure they won't pass up on the opportunity to have 2 Narutos in the game, which I'll bring up a little bit later on in this video. He's a fairly popular character as well. He's got a lot of cool animations. Definitely a character I expect to show up on the roster. Now, originally we had Lychee in this part of the video, but I've decided to replace it with Jubei because Jubei is a closer match to the silhouettes we saw revealed earlier on. There's a tiny little guy in one of these silhouettes, and I think Jubei is the best match for it that we have available to us. Next up is Bang. I do not know anything about this character, but according to my friend, he should be on this list to show up if there's going to be 10 BlazBlue characters. Next up is Aurelius. Again, not a character I know much about, but his gameplay style seems very interesting to me, and definitely one that would mix up the BlazBlue cross tag battle game, because again, there's not much like him in that game so far, so I'd be happy to see him show up. And finally is Izanami. Again, if this one doesn't show up, don't blame me. I'm putting this one all on my friend, because I don't know much about the BlazBlue world, but she seems like a reasonable pick to me, and that's why she's on this list. So there you go, that's the 10 DLC characters for BlazBlue in particular. Now, this next one is supposed to be very easy. We're going to go into Persona characters, starting off with Kanji, and then Naruto, Teddy, and Labris. Apparently this is just supposedly very easy because of the way that Persona works. I have not played Persona, but it's a JRPG where you have different party members, and apparently this is like the order we get the party members in, and it seems that ArcSystemWorks is following that pretty much to a T since they announced that Persona was going to be in this game. So it certainly does not surprise me. Next up is Undernight. This is one we struggled with for quite a while. Our list ended up containing Seth. We went with Seth because he's a fan favorite character, and he has a very unique look, which I think is valuable for them. Even if somebody doesn't recognize Seth, people are going to want to buy him because of the way that he looks. There's going to be a ton of people who buy this game specifically for the Ruby part of the roster, even though it's the smallest part of the roster. All is forgiven, sprites are hard to work on, I understand, but a lot of people are going to be buying this game specifically for that. So when they look at the DLC roster, they need to see characters that they can look at and go, oh, he looks cool. So I think Seth is a surefire pick for the Undernight roster. Next up is Batista, and I'm kind of sad to put Batista on this list because I feel like if Batista goes on here, Penny is never going to show up ever. That being said, I don't think Penny was ever going to show up in this game regardless, but Batista will probably have like a color palette that reminds you of Penny, so I'll take it, I guess. Next up is Merkava. Merkava is apparently a very core character to Undernight. He's a monster type character, so different character archetypes from the individual series is a good idea, and Merkava fits that role well. Now, I've been told everybody just calls this character Yuzu. Again, a unique character from Undernight. I don't have much input on this one because I don't know much about her, but I think the prediction is fine. So there you go. That is my BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle prediction roster. Technically not even my list, so if these are completely wrong and completely inaccurate, then don't shoot me, I guess. But as far as the proportions among the roster, the 10 BlazBlue characters, the 4 Persona characters, the 4 Undernight characters, and the 2 Ruby characters, that is my prediction. I think that's absolutely the way they're going to do it. It just seems to make the most sense to me, even though I really hope that we don't end up with that many BlazBlue characters. That would be half of the roster BlazBlue characters. That's fine, I guess, but it is a little bit disappointing when a big part of the draw of this game is the Ruby characters, because we've all played a BlazBlue game. If we've wanted to play Persona, there's Persona games out there that you can go play. Some of us have played Undernight. Granted, Undernight doesn't have a huge fan base, but it is much easier for them to do Undernight characters because they've already got the sprites. What is a big deal is that there's going to be so many people who buy this game who aren't going to have the chance to play as many as Ruby characters as they hoped for. Like I said earlier on in this video with my crazy roster, I'll try and show it on screen now. Obviously, this would have taken thousands and thousands and thousands of hours for them to be able to make this type of roster because of the amount of sprite work that would be required, but imagine how happy people would be. Obviously, I'm not advocating that this is what they should have done because this would have made them lose a lot of money, so obviously I'm not expecting them to do something like this, but I like what they are doing, slowly implementing more Ruby characters so that hopefully one day we can actually get a full-on Ruby game, because I would play the heck out of that. You have no idea. I would train my absolute hardest to make sure that I am the best person in the planet at playing the Ruby fighting game. I will make sure that that happens because, oh my god, I would be so happy. If I could sit down and just play Velvet, I would be so happy with life. I could just move on. That would be it. We would have hit the pinnacle of humanity. Well, at least I think so. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I've got some pretty big news coming out tomorrow, so stay subscribed for that, of course. My name has been BlazBlue, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.
Holy mackerel.